Hello, in this video we are going to graph exponential function, and also we are going to look at some properties of exponential function. Okay, so let's first graph two functions. So first I'm going to try to graph function of x equals 3 power x. All right, so in this case, as you can see, the base a is 3 for this function. All right, and okay, so let me divide my screen into two half, and I'm going to try to plot another graph here where it is function of x equals 1/3 power x. So as you can see, in this case my base a is 1/3. All right, so let's try to plot one by one. Okay, so I am going to use the point method. So let's try to develop a chart. So let's say here is my x, and here is going to be my y, which is my function of x, which is equals 3 power x. So if x equals -1, what I get y equals 3 power -1, which is 1/3. Okay, if x equals 0, my y is 3 power 0, which is equals 1, and if x equals 1, it is going to be 3 power 1, which is going to be equal to 3. Okay, so let us try to plot it. So we have x-axis and y-axis. So first point is what? -1, 1/3. So -1 is somewhere here, and then 1/3 is somewhere here. Okay, so this point is my, so this point is -1, 1/3. And then what's the next point? 0, 1. So x is 0, y is 1. So it is somewhere here. And the third point is 1, 3. So x is 1, y is 3. And this is what? This is my x is 0, y is 1. So, and of course I can have x equal to 2, y equal to, and then x equal to 3, blah blah blah. All right, so now let's connect this point and see what I basically get. So if I connect this point, you are going to see that I am going to get this type of graph, which is exponentially increasing. Okay, so this is my plot of my function, which is function of x is 3 power x with base a equals 3. Now if a equals 3, what can I say? This particular point is what? This particular point is 1, and 3 means it is a, and you know this point is 0, 1, so I'm not going to change anything. So this is 0, 1, and as you can see, the other point, this particular point, x ordinate is -1, 1/3. So I can say it is what? 1/a. So let's remember this fact. Okay, so let us look at the other graph. Okay, for the other function, let's develop the table. So I have x here, and then my y is what? 1/3 power x. So again, if x is -1, what I get? 1/3 power -1, and if you punch the calculator, you are going to find this is equal to 3. And if x equal to 0, 1/3 power 0 is of course equals to 1, and then if x equals 1, then it will be 1/3 power 1 is my y, which is going to be equal to 1/3. Okay, so these are my few points I have plotted. So let us now plot these points. So if I try to plot these points over here, so this is my x-axis, this is my y-axis. So which one is my first? So let's plot this one. 1 and y is 1/3. So 1 and 1/3 is somewhere here. Okay, and then x is 0, y is 1, which is somewhere here, and -1 3. So -1 3 will be somewhere here. Okay, so this is what, -1 3, and this is 0 1, and this point is 1 1/3. Now if I try to connect all these 3 points or all these points, what I get, I basically get a graph something like that. Okay, now let's try to see. For my function, base is what, 1/3. So if base is 1/3, I can say this point is what, 1 and 1/3 means 1a, so it is 1a, and then this point is 0 1, so I'm not going to do anything. And what about this point? It is -1 x ordinate, now 3. So a is what, 1/3, so 3 I can write 1/a. So let's keep this thing in mind. And now I am going to try to look at some properties of exponential function. Okay, so let's look at some properties. So let's have some properties of exponential functions. So properties. So number one property, if you notice domain of my function, so domain means all the values of x, so it can run from -infinite to +infinite. Same for this function, -infinite to +infinite. So a domain of any exponential function is -infinite to +infinite, so that is domain. Now let's look at the range of any exponential function. What is the definition of range? The values of y. Now if I look at this function, you see my whole graph is above x-axis. Okay, no portion of the graph is below x-axis. Similar to this graph, whole graph is above x-axis, so no portion of the graph is below x-axis. So all the values of y is basically 0 to +infinite. Okay, so that is the range for any exponential function. Now let's look at some other fact. So number 3 fact is, if the base a is greater than 1, so if my base a, exponent of base a is greater than 1, what is going to happen? My graph is a increasing graph. Okay, so it is rises to the right, so my graph is what, an increasing function. So this is an increasing function, so it is an increasing function. Now let's look at property number 4. If my base a is less than 1, so in this case, as you can see, my a is 1/3. So if my base is less than 1, what is going to happen? My graph is basically a decreasing function, so it is a decreasing function. So it is then decreasing function. Okay, so so up to now we are fine. So now let us see another very important, so number 5. So I'm going to use another color for that. So number 5 is the most important property. If you notice, any exponential function is going to pass through these 3 points. Any exponential function is going to pass through these 3 points. And what are these 3 points? -1 over 1/3, 0, 1, and 1a. So it is going to pass through -1. So any exponential function passes through which 3 point? -1, 1 over a. So -1, 1 over a, and then what? 0, 1, and the last point is what? 1a. So that is very important point. Now another thing I want to point out to you is, so you see I have written 2 function. What is my first function? Function of x is 3 power x. And what is the second function I wrote? Function of x is 1 over 3 power x. Now what can I write? This function as 3 power -x. So you see, so these 2 function, if you notice the plot, it is actually what? One and other function is basically, if you flip the function about y-axis, then you actually get the other function. All right, so the graph of graph, so if I write it down as the number 6, so graph of a function which is y equals a power -x, so which is like this one, is reflection of which function? A power x. Reflection of a power x about which axis? That y-axis, or about this y-axis. So if you reflect one function about y-axis, you get the other about y-axis. Okay, so these are some properties of exponential function. So that will be the end of this video. In the next video we are going to learn interest problem. Okay, so